Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions is like no other game, instead spreading its 12-hour campaign across 4 3-hour mini-campaigns that all provide a different combat and gameplay experience unique to their own respected dimensions. So without further ado, let's discuss the very first one we're introduced to, the Amazing Dimension. The Amazing Dimension is absolutely perfect for what it's trying to do, and that's to be a fun introduction to the Shattered Dimensions experience, providing a traditional Spider-Man adventure that will satisfy every fan coming to the game expecting just that. The levels are extremely fun in this universe, with the level design being an absolute highlight here. Because swinging through Kraven's vibrant jungle or zipping across Sandman's tornadoes seriously never gets old because of how well this aesthetic translates the visuals of these environments. The villains are also really fun and creative in this dimension, with Juggernaut, Kraven and Sandman being the main headliners here, which creates a lot of fun opportunities for cool set pieces and really enjoyable moments. For example, there's this one section in Kraven's level where he attempts to snipe you down from his POV and you have to move Spider-Man from this fixed camera angle. It's really fun. And the soundtrack, while sometimes a little basic compared to the FromSoft level OSTs we hear in the other dimensions, it still serves its purpose and encapsulates the atmosphere of this universe wonderfully. I really like it. However, let's get into the main highlight of this dimension, which is the combat. If I could ever describe the combat in this game, it's the closest thing to a comic book I've ever seen translated into gameplay. Spider-Man kind of behaves like Sandman in the sense that he can forge weapons with his webs, like hammers, maces, and whips. Because of this gameplay choice, it makes the combat feel extremely versatile. And thankfully it never lets up as you progress, unlocking more and more acrobatics and web abilities, making your arsenal towards the end of the game absolutely deadly. Which you're definitely gonna need because the bosses in this dimension are extremely unforgiving and can be quite difficult to overcome. With Juggernaut and Kraven giving me quite a bit of trouble my first time around, even though I did punch them in the face like 20 times with my Wii motion controls. The boss fights in this dimension are solid and extremely varied, with Sandman being my personal favourite. Because in his boss fight, there's a really fun moment where he has this sort of existential crisis about who he is and why he's doing what he's doing. It's honestly one of my favourite moments in the game. In conclusion, the Amazing Dimension is absolutely phenomenal. However, I think it's time we jump into something a little more dark, a little more spooky, a little more noir. The Noir Dimension is like no other in the entire game. It's a dimension that oozes this dark energy, the character designs are more monstrous and twisted, the atmosphere desaturated and bleak, and the gameplay more desperate and anxious. These levels will have you playing as Noir Spider-Man, who uses the shadows to pick off his enemies over the ominous moonlight backdrop. If you haven't drawn the obvious connections yet, the gameplay for this dimension was heavily inspired, or if you're a cynical, a downright copy of Batman Arkham Asylum. However, to give Beanox some credit, Spider-Man feels completely different to how Batman feels in the Arkham games. He feels faster and more nimble in a way Arkham Batman never felt. His animations are more ruthless and cold compared to Arkham's more tactical and stealthy approach. To give credit to Beanox, they didn't just copy Rocksteady, they built upon the foundations of Asylum and added their own twist on the concept. Accept this though, this is what we call plagiarism. Now, I'm gonna show some tough love here, because the gameplay in the Noir Dimension is a deeply conflicting experience, because the two sides of the gameplay loop feel completely restricted to their own respected approaches. I know that sounds kinda confusing, so let me explain. When you're engaging enemies in combat, there are no opportunities to perform stealth. And when you're in a stealth section, you cannot approach enemies, otherwise you'll be punching what can only be described as a damage sponge for minutes on end. And yes, you heard that right. Oh, and by the way, quick side tangent, the AI with these guards is borderline fucking omniscient.
Where's Spider-Man? I could have sworn I seen him!
It's a hammerhead goon.
Let's take this fucker out. Bug! Spider-Man! He's over there!
How did you hear that? That was like 30 meters away.
Say goodnight, Bug!
Stealth in this game is restrictive in a way that confuses me because the Arkham games didn't have this issue. They allow you opportunities to perform stealth in combat areas and stealth sections, and sure, was it preferred to beat the fuck out of an armed guard in a room full of armed guards? No, of course it wasn't, but you had the choice at the end of the day, even if it was a death sentence 90% of the time. However, in this game, that's unfortunately not the case. You play exactly how the game wants you to play at all times with very, if any, opportunities to think outside of the box. Now, is this a huge problem and something that destroys the Shattered Dimension experience? No, of course not, let's not be silly. However, a little more player choice could have gone a long way and definitely could have added some replay value to these Noir levels and made them something truly special. Okay, with that little nitpick out the way, let's dive into this dimension and really discuss what I love about this universe specifically, because there's a lot to chew on here. The Noir Dimension has the most uniqueness out of the four because it has a presentation none of the other three come close to. It's dark, gritty, the soundtrack demands this almost evil-like presence of chaos and corruption. The villains are more cruel and sadistic, with Goblin, Hammerhead and Vulture all taking the form of a disfigured, almost monstrous design that legitimately scared me as a child. Honestly, if you've never played this game before, I think it's worth experiencing just for this one element alone. The pure detail and lengths this dimension goes to immerse you in these levels is downright impressive, with the soundtrack playing creepy, ominous motifs making you feel uncomfortable and afraid of what lurks in the shadows. And to avoid these levels being too spooky for younger audiences like 10-year-old me at the time, the game made the outstanding choice to make all these villains as interesting and charismatic as they possibly could be, with each villain chewing up the scenery every chance they get. Especially Hammerhead. I need to suck this guy's cock just for a second, because Hammerhead in this game is absolute perfection. His lines are cheeky and cunning, his presence calm and calculated, and the performance? Well, you can ask Bender what he thinks, because they're both played by John Diamagi, a phenomenal voice actor who brings a whole new dimension to this character. And the other villains we see in this universe, such as Vulture and Osborn, are both monstrously grotesque and really fun incarnations of these villains. To sum this section up, the Noir Dimension is awesome. It's ambitious, immersive, and has some of the most enjoyable performances in the entire game, and has a genuinely compelling story which could sum up the plot of an entire game. Okay, with all that said, we're now going to talk about 2099. Definitely the most underwhelming dimension. Okay, so this is going to be the only time I'm going to truly critique this game, because the 2099 dimension, while really fun, is definitely where I have the most issues. The aesthetic of this world is awe-inspiring, with neon lights permeating the streets, hovering above ground as vibrant billboards glow in the distance. However, there's just one small issue, and I'll see if you guys can spot it. You can only see so many vibrant colors and flashing lights before your eyes begin to overload and malfunction. But to give Beanox some credit, fortunately this is only specifically an issue when traversing or moving, because when you're standing as still as a statue, everything looks fine and really honestly quite impressive. However, the second you begin to advance, the frame rate will begin to collapse and dissolve into a nightmare of neon lights and dated particle effects. You do gain access to slow-mo attacks and an entirely new combat style which is faster and more agile than any of the other Spider-Men, but in my opinion, this is absolutely nothing compared to Ultimate Symbiote abilities where you demolish several enemies at once, or hell, even Noir's stealth where you pick off goons one by one. These abilities gave you a new way to engage with enemies because they encourage you to take advantage of more mechanics to solve different encounters. However, in 2099, this slow-mo ability has no such incentive. There's hardly any sections where it's required to be used in combat because it serves no real purpose outside being a helpful tool that can get you out of some pretty sticky situations. Perhaps if they treated this slow-mo ability like a flash speed force where you zip around the arena taking out dozens of enemies in a matter of seconds, which to be fair it sometimes becomes that. Or perhaps using Mikkel's fangs and he's jumping from enemy to enemy, biting them and killing them. I know it would be completely out of character, but that'd be fucking cool, right? What we got definitely wasn't bad, and still is really fun, but the potential for the gameplay to be something truly unique is noticeably lacking and almost disappointing once you realise what this could have been. But to give this dimension a little bit of credit, there are some gimmicks and qualities exclusive to 2099 that are really fun and worth discussing. For example, these free-falling sections where you have to pursue the enemy while avoiding the nightmare-inducing tubes and vibrant lights are most of the time enjoyable. They serve to be an interactive set piece that adds an extra layer to these boss fights and levels in a way that tests your reaction and positioning skills. It's really fun, despite being a little mindless sometimes. And we can't forget the boss fights. All of these bosses are enjoyable, with all three providing a unique challenge that tests this combat system with a variety of mechanics that can't be found in any other dimension. In every other level that isn't 2099, you usually have to fight the same boss 2 times in a row, with the second phase being more or less the same as the first with some new attacks and a flashy new arena. However, in 2099, all of the bosses have 2 different phases that feel like an evolution over the first, providing a more challenging encounter. In conclusion, the 2099 dimension is an unfortunate visual mess, containing some really ambitious ideas. Perhaps if they drew more inspiration from the source material and really took advantage of Mikael O'Hara's abilities, this could have been even better. And if there ever was a remaster or remake for this game, which I absolutely hope there is someday, I feel as if this dimension specifically has the most potential to be realized to a closer version for what the devs maybe wanted these levels to be. Because as it stands right now, these sections feel a little disappointing and slightly unfulfilling. But then again, at its worst, they're still really fun levels that offer something different despite how successful these ideas were in execution. However, it's time to move on to our last dimension, and quite possibly the best. The Ultimate Dimension. The Ultimate Dimension is one of my favourites in the entire game, because it seems to draw the best qualities from all of the other dimensions to forge what can only be described as a near-perfect Spidey campaign. The levels are all fun and unique to engage with, especially Deadpool's level, which might just be the highlight point of the game, clashing with Hammerhead in my opinion. The combat has a really fun gimmick, throwing you into a symbiote surge-like move where you take out dozens of enemies in a Hyrule Warriors fashion. It's so fun. These abilities also come with their own distinct movesets, which completely changes the way you fight enemies. Because if you ignore the symbiote, you'll be dead so fucking fast it's not even funny. Also, the music in this dimension is damn near fucking perfect, with all 3 levels having memorable tracks that I constantly listen to when I'm playing worse Spider-Man games, lifting, or going on a run. With Carnage being my personal favourite, it captures the horror essence of this level perfectly, with the score crescendoing into a climax of desperation and fear, which is definitely appropriate considering this guy gave me literal fucking nightmares throughout my entire childhood. However, when talking about this dimension, there's one thing you cannot ignore, and that's the Merc with the Mouth himself.
Deadpool! Hi, Ma, and welcome to Pain Factor, the only show where you compete for your life! And remember, viewers, I'm available for Black Ops missions, assassinations, and birthday parties!
I don't know what's weird, that this guy can somehow come back from the dead, or that they gave him a TV show.
Coming up, we've got a very special Pain Factor, with a very special guest running the gauntlet.
Who?
You, Spider-Man!
Wait, what?
That's right! Our guest today will be the one, the only, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man! Because he needs this.
Television, you are a cruel mistress.
This level is absolutely exceptional. It's the only level in the game that has a sandbox you can explore in and discover secrets and collectibles. It's the only level in the game that encourages you to stray from the linear path and explore the oil rig to find all the nook and crannies to level up your Spidey essence. And when you progress through the level enough, you get to spend time with Deadpool, played by Nolan North, who is my definitive Deadpool. And followed by this are some of the game's greatest set pieces, where you have to avoid tidal waves and a time trial survival chase and a boss fight with Deadpool, which was a really fun challenge. Definitely not one of the greatest bosses in this game by any means, but an enjoyable brawl nonetheless. It's worth playing the game just for this one level alone. It's by far one of my favourites in the game. I think my only issues with this dimension are strangely in the Electro level. Despite having one of the better bosses in the game and some really cool art direction, I just feel that this entire section is a little strenuous. There's a few too many fights with Electro, the level is a little generic and uninspired, most of the setting is literally just hallways and power plant tunnels. And it's linear in a way that's just quite frankly absurd. All this is a little underwhelming considering the other 3 dimensions in Act 1 offer some of the greatest levels their respected campaigns have to offer. But here we start on a little bit of a whimper. Not a bad whimper by any means, just a little underwhelming compared to the following 2 levels that are both in my top 5 favorites of the entire game. At least he has an amazing OST though, definitely one of the best in the game by far. The Ultimate Dimension is everything I love about the Shattered Dimensions action portion of this experience. It's fun, engaging, offers a new twist on the gameplay, and has some of the greatest levels the experience has to offer. And when it needs to get serious and mature, they give you some unsettling moments of terror like the Carnage level. And when it wants to surprise you and throw you off, they give you some of the greatest 40 minutes of this game, maybe. Ultimately, it's an experience that's ambitious, and basically does everything the Amazing Dimension does, just to a more elevated and successful tier. I love this campaign, it's so freaking good. Honestly, it's worth playing the game just for these levels. They're so fucking amazing, please play this game, man. Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions is in my opinion the prime example for what a perfect Spider-Man game should offer you. The opportunity to jump into a comic book, exploring various worlds, interacting with different incarnations of beloved villains, and engaging with stories that help us connect and relate to the struggles of Spider-Man in a way that feels human. So imagine my excitement when I say this game does all those things and so much more. The gameplay is perfect, with each dimension having its own distinct style and unique progression, making them all feel individual. The villains we encounter are some of Spidey's most ruthless, most twisted antagonists portrayed in any Spider-Man media. And the music is the perfect Spidey ensemble of memorable motifs and orchestral scores that deliver the raw spectacle of battling their greatest foes. It's the perfect Spider-Man game that strives to introduce as many creative and ambitious ideas as possible and develop them across the entire game. Please play this game, it's damn near perfect with very few flaws, and even the flaws it does have are spread off so distant you won't even notice them. Unless you have eye problems. Don't play this game if you have eye problems. This is not just one of my favourite Spider-Man games of all time, it's one of my favourite video games of all time. And with that said, viewer, I'll leave you with Stan Lee's ending monologue to this masterpiece of a video game.
I'm the best! And so ends one of the most titanic team-ups of all time. And what have we learned here today, Marvelites? That no matter what corner of the cosmos you may find yourself in, there'll always be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man to save the day. And to all of you web-spinning wonders, I proudly say, Excelsior!
I found you, Spider! What the fuck? Where do you think you're going, boy? I found you! I found you, Spider! Oh, dude.